Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic.
He could hear nothing, not the deafening sound of the waterfall or the falling debris from their recent battle. He felt as though he couldn't see either. Not the fallen remains of the iconic landmark, nor the dark-haired Uchiha that he held firmly by the throat. All he could do was wonder. Wonder just how they had gotten to this moment. It felt like yesterday when he and his team had last gone to eat ramen together. Laughter and funny stories flowed between the team naturally. Well, most of them were laughing. Sasuke was never much the type. Now they were here at the Valley of the End, having just fought one of the most grueling battles of their careers. 5 of his fellow shinobi had to be left behind to face opponents well out of their league just to get here, to have this chance, to bring him back, and for what? Sasuke didn't want to be here, and yet they all risked their lives, almost died for this very moment Naruto found himself in. Then he felt it. The burning sensation on his wrist. Tsunade had given each of them a watch containing their chakra signatures. It was to help better locate one another and to remain aware of the other's well-being. This was a mission no ninja of their level should ever be sent on. Naruto assumed it was Tsunade's way of showing her worry, even if she didn't say it. Now, the worst was coming to fruition. Someone had died. Naruto stared at his watch for what seemed like an eternity to Sasuke. He couldn't believe he was stuck in this moment, his very future resting in the hands of his ex-comrade. How did Naruto get so strong? It was a question that would itch at his brain for as long as he lived, assuming he lived. Had this been a week ago, Sasuke wouldn't doubt that Naruto would spare him, bring him back. Now, however, he wasn't sure. He didn't recognize the boy grasping his neck, squeezing so tightly it brought tears to the corners of his eyes. No, he didn't recognize him at all. The blank, almost lifeless gaze that adorned the boy's face wasn't much different from the Naruto he knew. Naruto was constantly faking his emotions, and it seemed Sasuke was one of the few to truly realize. This look, however, was new, foreign. Then it clicked. The watch had 4 bright markings, and one had just dimmed. They were his teammates. Someone had died. Who? It didn't matter to him, not anymore. He was different now, no longer a leaf shinobi and no longer a comrade to any of those sent after him. He let darkness and vengeance guide him now, and he had no plans of altering his course. He smiled a sick and twisted smile. Naruto couldn't grasp the emotion swirling within him. He wasn't one to feel empathy, he'd never know regret or guilt. Tsunade summed up his sociopathy to his poor upbringing. He'd never felt those emotions, yet knew he wasn't feeling them now. No, it wasn't a shift in emotions he was feeling, it was his views, his outlooks, and ideologies. All changed and never to return. He glanced at the traitor that remained in his grasp and felt angry. No, he knew anger well, it was one of the few emotions he didn't have to fake. Sadness. Maybe. He did care for his comrades, regardless of how poorly he was at showing it. Yes, he felt sad, but that wasn't what was bothering him. Then he realized. As he stared into the smiling, amused face of the Uchiha, he realized what it was he was feeling. It was a realization, an understanding of his responsibility. He needed to Sasuke Uchiha. Tsunade wasn't one to show her worry very often. Hell, she hadn't felt worried about anything since she was a much younger woman. That was until he came into her life. Naruto had helped her find meaning again, and for that, she was truly grateful. When he had almost died in their brief conflict with Orochimaru and Kabuto, she had felt herself worry for the first time in years. Now here she was again, worrying. She knew it was wrong. Naruto's chakra source wasn't the one to disappear, yet she couldn't help but think of him. She had only returned to the village for him after all. Does that make her a bad Hokage, a bad person? Maybe, but she didn't care. Naruto Uzumaki was her priority. He was going to grow to become one of the most powerful shinobi to ever live, and she'd make sure of it. Kakashi was running as fast as he could through the forest outside of Konoha. He knew he should have done a better job of talking Sasuke out of his plan for vengeance after his brief spat with Naruto on the hospital rooftop. Now he was here chasing their chakra signatures to what he could only imagine was a fight to the death. What was it with him and his teams? Kakashi could never seem to get it right. Whether that was as a teammate or a teacher, it always seemed to fall apart. As he raced to his destination, he sensed an immense amount of chakra flooding his sensors for an amount of time that failed to give Kakashi any sort of comfort. Please be okay. I can't fail you too. Finally, after what felt like hours, Kakashi arrived at the Valley of the End. His relief, however, vanished just as quickly as it came. Sitting at the bottom of the valley were Naruto and Sasuke, but they weren't alone, and if he didn't act quickly, he'd lose both his students today. Sakura was upset. Truthfully, she felt like locking herself in her room and crying. Why am I so weak? I couldn't help Naruto and his team get Sasuke back, and I couldn't go with Kakashi. What am I doing with myself? Sakura was walking aimlessly away from the gate. Kakashi had left not too long ago. She hoped he'd make it on time. After Naruto and Sasuke's altercation at the hospital, Sakura realized just how dangerous a fight between the two could be. And now they're out there alone, probably beating the crap out of each other. Just as Sakura was about to turn the corner of the street leading to Konoha's main entrance, she heard a large amount of murmurs and whispers from behind her. She spun around to locate the source of the commotion and smiled when she saw Kakashi standing next to Naruto. Standing beside them were Shikamaru and Temari as well. She hadn't realized that Temari had been involved in the mission but wasn't going to complain. Just another person who could help before me. As Sakura approached the group, she noticed something was off. Shikamaru's head was down, and Temari was looking at him with slight worry. Glancing toward Naruto and Kakashi, she noticed that they, too, held a negative aura about them. Then she realized that someone was missing. The very person this team had been formulated for. Where's Sasuke? Asked Sakura. Her smile quickly faded when no one gave her an immediate answer. Finally, Shikamaru decided to speak up, the silence annoying him for the first time. Dying a slow death, I hope. Sakura was confused. Shikamaru had just said he'd hoped Sasuke was dying, and no one else seemed to object. Then she saw it, the med nins carrying stretchers approaching the group from behind. The med nins were in a hurry, not even glancing at them as they ran past with the utmost urgency. The first stretcher carried Kiba with Akamaru lying on his stomach. They seemed exhausted but fine for the most part. The second was Neji. He looked far worse than Kiba, and if not for the slight grunt he made on the way past, Sakura wouldn't have known whether or not he was alive. The last stretcher passed at a much slower rate, the medics were practically walking. The body on this stretcher was covered by what seemed to be a white sheet. There were slight blood stains near the head of the stretcher, but it was mostly clean. Then she realized. The only other person to have been sent on the mission. The one she had yet to see was on that stretcher. Not moving, not making a noise, not breathing. Lifeless. Dead. Choji was a far better person than Sasuke ever could have been, he didn't deserve to die for that, said Shikamaru. Tears were now threatening to spill from his eyes as he stared at the lifeless body of his friend being carried away. Sakura noticed that Temari was no longer looking at Shikamaru but at Naruto. She had a look of understanding, yet at the same time sadness. When she turned to look at Naruto, it took every ounce of strength she had not to look away. She had never seen that look in his eyes before. So cold and sharp, like they were piercing her very soul. Before she could even think of what to say, Naruto spoke up. His voice carried that same coldness that his eyes did, just as direct yet shockingly softer. Change of plans, Sakura. He had said her name oddly, almost with disdain. Had she done something? No. That was the problem, she had done nothing. The hallway of the medical wing where Kiba and Neji were being operated on was, for the most part, silent and depressing. Everyone was confident in their friends' recoveries. Tsunade was the one operating on them after all. That wasn't, however, what was causing the somber mood. Their missing friend was Choji. He hadn't made it, hadn't survived. You're told in the academy that you will lose comrades. It's not an if but a when. Everyone listens to this, but nothing can truly prepare you for your first time. Tamari had just finished speaking with Shikamaru when he decided he'd had enough and walked down to the other end of the hallway. Naruto noticed that his father, Shikaku, seemed to have intercepted him before Shikamaru could get too far. Not caring for the conversation they were having, Naruto leaned back against the wall and continued to wait with everyone else. Gaara, Lee, and Kankuro were there now, returning to the village just after the medical ninjas had. Naruto was surprised to find out that the Sand siblings had been sent to help them on their retrieval mission, but he welcomed it nonetheless. He quite liked the Sand siblings, at least he liked Tamari and Gaara. He didn't care much for Kankuro. It's not that he disliked the guy, he was just indifferent. Gaara was like him. Similar upbringings and a lack of foundation sent them down a dark path early on, yet they were still here, managing to be relatively normal people. Well, as normal as two extremely emotionally stunted teenagers hated by their villages with raging-tailed beasts living inside them can be. Ah, who cares, could be worse. I mean, Gaara was a murdering psychopath like yesterday. I'd say we're improving. Tamari was well aware of what had probably been occupying the boy's mind for the past few hours. She remembered when Gaara had begun to go through the same change years ago. The realization and understanding of the life they had to live because of who they were, and who the villages needed them to be. Gaara had been pushed to the breaking point, or so she thought. After his battle with Naruto, he'd changed. She wasn't sure what was said or how it managed to leave such an impact on her brother. As far as she knew, Naruto didn't care much for others. If you weren't in his immediate circle, he probably wouldn't bat an eye at you. Then she found out who he was, what he was. Gaara had told her when they got back to Suna that Naruto had a tailed beast sealed inside of him, too. Then it all made sense to her. Naruto was probably one of the only people who could help Gaara. He was one of the only people who truly understood him. She was grateful to Naruto and didn't want to see him go down the same path as her brother. She figured chances are he wouldn't, given he made it his far without going crazy, but still. A shinobi's life was anything but predictable, especially if you were a Jinchuriku. Tamari felt indebted to Naruto, and if she could prevent him from becoming any less than he was now, she'd do it. Naruto was someone worth fighting for, she just needed him to let her in. Naruto noticed Tamari staring at him. She'd been watching him ever since Shikamaru had walked off. Naruto turned to see if Shikamaru was still talking with his father, only to be surprised when he saw him and Ino hugging. He hadn't even realized Ino had arrived, let alone walked past him. He'd been so deep in thought, thinking about his last interaction with Sasuke, that he had unintentionally zoned out his surroundings. Except for Tamari. For whatever reason, he was well aware of the piercing gaze that remained locked on him the entire time he'd been posted up against the wall. With a sigh, Naruto turned back and decided to get to the bottom of her curiosity. "Something bothering you, Tamari?" asked Naruto. Tamari didn't waver, however. She kept her gaze locked on him as a smirk began to form on her lips. "No, nothing's wrong. Just wondering why you were staring at the ceiling like an idiot." Naruto's eyebrows raised as he wasn't expecting such a response from the girl. "Oh, just thinking of which flavor of instant ramen I'll have when I get home." A smile of his own graced his lips as he realized Tamari didn't believe his lie for a second. "Oh, please Uzumaki, you can't fool me with such a piss-poor fib. I've lived with Kankuro for 15 years. He's far dumber than you could ever be. Thanks for the praise, Tamari, you will forever be in my good graces, dear princess of the sand." That was praise, right? You weren't insulting me, asked Naruto with a sarcastic tone, not for a second losing his smirk. Tamari snorted as her smile widened with Naruto's response. She realized she was quite enjoying this little back and forth. She terrified most people back in her home village, and her relationship with Gaara didn't help. Eventually, she stopped bothering to try to make friends. She sure as hell wasn't going to change who she was, and she most certainly wasn't going to cut off her brother just to appeal to the majority, so she figured it wasn't worth the effort. Fortunately, Naruto didn't care who you were or your level of importance. If he liked you, he liked you. If he didn't, he didn't. Luckily enough for Tamari, Naruto was the very person she wanted to get closer to. If they had a fun dynamic to go along with that, she wasn't going to complain. Sakura was watching Naruto and Tamari as they whispered to each other. They both had smiles on their faces as they spoke on the other end of the hall from her. She couldn't understand how they could smile at a time like this. Choji had just died, and Sasuke had gotten away. Her conclusion dissipated slightly as she acknowledged that Naruto had always been weird with certain emotions, almost as if his brain didn't know how to process some of them. The details of Naruto's failure were still foggy, as he hadn't explained it when he returned, but she figured she could get answers out of him later. She knew there'd at least been a fight between the two. Naruto had a slight limp and would occasionally rub his chest just to the side of his heart during their walk to the hospital, but by the time they'd arrived, he seemed fine. Now that she thought about it, he always seemed to heal quickly. Abnormally quick. Does he have some sort of keke genkai? I'll have to ask him that later, too. Sakura then thought about what Naruto had said just before they made their way to the hospital. He said he'd Sasuke. Did he really mean that? No, Naruto would never. Everyone was just super emotional because of Choji's death, that's all. Sakura hoped she was right. She didn't know what she'd do if Naruto truly wanted to Sasuke. If she was being honest with herself, there wasn't anything she could do. I'm still too weak. I need to get stronger if I want to stand a chance at bringing Sasuke back to the village. Before Sakura could think any further, the doors to the medical wing opened with Suand walking through them. Both Kiba and Neji will be okay. Neji's operation was a little tough, and he'll need more time to recover, but they'll both be fine, said Tsunade, bringing relief to everyone in the hallway. Lee and Tenten, who had arrived shortly after Ino did, let out a relieved sigh while Hinata and Shino, who had arrived with them, let smiles adorn their faces. At least everyone figured Shino was smiling. You could never really tell with him. I want all of you in my office tomorrow morning by 8. There's something I need to discuss with you on top of the mission report, finished Tsunade as she began to walk down the hallway. She stopped momentarily and placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder, wanting to make sure he was okay. I'm alright, Auntie Tsunade, you know me, I heal quickly, whispered Naruto. I know, sweetie, I just worry is all. Everyone in the hallway was trying to eavesdrop on their conversation while dramatically leaning out of their chairs. They couldn't hear much as Suand and Naruto were whispering, but this didn't stop their curiosity. Most had noticed just how close Suand was to Naruto when she returned to the village, but no one knew the full extent of their relationship. Tamari, on the other hand, heard most of what was being said between the two, and while she was surprised at first, her happiness that Naruto had someone to care for him overtook that emotion. Come walk with me to my office, there's something I want to talk to you about, said Tsunade as she put her arm around Naruto and exited the hallway. Well, I'm going to go tell Choji's parents, might as well get it out of the way, said Shikamaru as he thrust himself off the wall he was leaning against. Ino spoke up after him while rising from her seat. I'll come with you, no need to do it alone. Shikamaru gave her a quick look of appreciation as they left the hospital together. Slowly, everyone began to trickle out until only one remained. Sakura. She couldn't rack her brain around Sasuke's departure. Everything about it rubbed her the wrong way. She decided she needed to talk to Naruto as soon as possible and figure out just what happened during their fight. Then she remembered that everyone had been called to Tsunade's office the following morning and figured that'd be her chance. With that final thought, Sakura rose to her feet and began her departure. She stopped just before exiting the wing, glancing back at the doors leading to Neji and Kiba's rooms. I promise to be strong enough to fight alongside you next time. Sakura then turned and exited the wing, walking home with a newfound motivation. It was dark out when Naruto began his trek home. Tsunade had wanted to know the details of his mission before everyone else, just in case there was something the others shouldn't know. Naruto wasn't sure why she found the need to have everyone present for the mission report but figured he was too tired to care at the moment. Suan glanced at Naruto to gauge his reaction. On the surface, he seemed unbothered, but Tsunade knew better. Her talk with Naruto the night before had helped her affirm what she had suspected about the boy. He may not be good at expressing it, but he was angry. Whether that was due to Choji's death or his failure to retrieve Sasuke, she wasn't sure. Probably both. He may not be capable of feeling deeply for outsiders, but Choji had been someone he'd grown up with, one of the few people who didn't treat him as if he were less than. After Suan helped Naruto recover from their encounter with Orochimaru, she spent days attempting to get the boy to open up to her. Finally, while on their way back to Konoha, Naruto spoke about part of his childhood. Choji and Shikamaru were two of his closest friends. Both refused to blindly follow the example of the village and instead opted to form a bond with the social outcast. Naruto didn't have many people he was close to. Loss was now a new emotion that he had to work through, and Tsunade planned on helping him every step of the way. As you all know, a team of 4 genin and 1 chunin had been sent on a mission to retrieve Sasuke Uchiha. During the events of this mission, Lee, Gaara, Kankuro, and Tamari were sent to assist the team. Unfortunately, Genin Choji Akamichi passed during his battle with one of the Sound Five. Tsunade made sure to carefully eye each of the room's occupants. Most managed to keep a straight face, with only a couple choosing to look down at the mention of Choji. True shinobi thought Tsunade was amused by the group's attempt at appearing strong-willed. Tsunade continued to explain the mission events in detail, only stopping to observe Naruto at certain moments of the report that would cause a shift in the atmosphere. When Tsunade reached the end of the report, silence settled upon the room as everyone let the information iron out in their minds. Before Tsunade could shift subjects, Naruto decided to interject, no longer possessing the patience to sit through whatever else Tsunade had planned to cover. If you don't mind, Auntie, what exactly did you bring us all here for? If it were to read out the mission report, half the people in this room could have slept in, Naruto finished with a bored expression. He had adopted a more sassy pose while speaking with his arms crossed over his chest and his weight shifted to the left of his body. Tsunade, for one, was amused. Naruto truly wasn't one for social norms. Honestly, it's refreshing, thought Tsunade. Life as a Sannin meant spending way too much time around formal settings and fake people. There are a couple of reasons I asked you all here. Don't worry, though, some of you will be allowed to leave before others. Naruto's expression remained passive as he waited for her to continue. Firstly, per Shinobi Article 15, if a genin team loses a member, the remaining 2 are given the option to drop out of the forces. As Tsunade spoke, she noticed Shikamaru's confused expression and decided to interject before he could speak. Yes, I know, Shikamaru, you're technically a chunin. I decided to abuse some power given my stature and include you in this decision, given it was your first mission as a chunin, and Ino is still a genin. Shikamaru returned to his usual uncaring stance, accepting Suan's explanation. Well, I'm not quitting, been through way too much just to bail now, said Shikamaru. Besides, I feel like I'd be disrespecting Choji if I quit just after he gave his life under my command. Same here, replied Ino. There's no way I'm quitting now. I have to honor Choji-sama, Ino was cut off before she could finish her sentence. Sakura had listened patiently the entire time they'd been in the office. Truthfully, the only concern she had was Sasuke. Sure, she cared about Choji, she had even vowed to get stronger to ensure she wouldn't sit idle while her comrades were out dying. She was starting to get impatient, though. They had been in the Hokage's office for 15 minutes now, and not once had Sasuke been brought up outside of the failure to retrieve him. What are we going to do about Sasuke? Orochimaru wants his body right, shouldn't he be our top priority? Asked Sakura. Everyone in the room looked at her as if she had gone insane. Everyone except Naruto, of course. He chose to glance at her out of the corner of his eye while remaining in the same unbothered posture. Tsunade couldn't believe the words that were leaving the girl's mouth. She knew Naruto didn't hold a very high opinion of her. His team dynamics were one of the things he'd chosen to open up about on their trek back to Konoha. This, however, was not something she'd expected. I'm going to choose to look past this unprofessionalism once and only once, Haruno. Please do not test my patience, said Tsunade sternly. It's ironic, really. I was just thinking about how amused I was by Naruto's disregard for social norms, and now I'm scolding someone else for it. I truly am a poor Hokage. Sakura, for her part, didn't flinch. She was greatly angered, though. Did the Hokage not care about Sasuke? The last Uchiha and the strongest genin of their generation. Sure, others would most likely not agree with her, but still, he was important not just to her but to the village. Surely that took precedence over whatever Tsunade had planned for this meeting, right? Right. Anyways, I'm glad to hear that teammate. Continued Suand. It would have been a shame to lose two talented young shinobi with such immense potential. Tsunade side-eyed Sakura and watched amused as the girl's jaw clenched. She truly cared about nothing but Sasuke. A shame, really. I read Kakashi's report on Sakura. Nearly perfect chakra control at such a young age. All that talent being put to waste on an obsession over a boy. What did she become a ninja for? A question for a later time, she supposed. Little did Tsunade know that the same question was soon to be voiced. Anyways, on to the next topic. Tamari, Kankuro, and Gaara. I wanted to thank you person, bang. Tsunade was starting to get tired of being interrupted. Glancing over to the door of her office, Tsunade watched as Sakura stormed out. I can't believe I wasted my time coming here, Sakura mumbled to herself as she stomped out of the Hokage's office. Before she could get even a quarter of the way into the hall, she heard Naruto speak up. I almost did him, you know. Everyone in the office turned to look at Naruto with confused expressions. Surely he doesn't mean, was the thought running through Sakura's head as she also turned to look at Naruto. He hadn't turned around, opting to stare mindlessly out the window behind Tsunade's desk. I had him by the throat, on his knees. I'd won. Finally beaten the great Sasuke Uchiha, snarked Naruto. Believe it or not, I didn't feel any type of way about it. I had always seen myself as his equal, regardless of how absurd that would have seemed no less than a year ago. Naruto had shifted back to an unbothered tone, his gaze remaining locked on the window. All I could think about was how we'd gotten there. To that mission. To that waterfall. To that moment. Our team's numbers had dwindled one by one as we continued to run into more of the Sound 5. We knew we'd probably die, yet each one of us knew it needed to be done. Naruto's eyes turned to Suand as she leaned forward on her desk. She seemed sad, worried, almost. Naruto realized that it was her care for him that caused the current expression on her face. It was new to him, and it felt good. When I felt Choji's chakra signature fade from existence and watched that idiotic smile spread across the bastard's face, the only thing I could think about was how much we had just wasted. How much Sasuke Uchiha wasn't worth dying for. Dash. Flashback. Is that anger on your face, idiot? Asked Sasuke. His smile had yet to falter as Naruto's grip on his neck tightened. Is this your first time losing someone, Naruto, huh? Oh, it is, isn't it? mocked Sasuke. The smile on his face fell as his features darkened. He'd been wanting to find a way to have this conversation with Naruto for a while. To tell him that despite them both being alone, they were not the same. Now imagine losing hundreds. You can't. No one can. You pretend like we're similar, as if just because we're both alone, that somehow makes us the same. Well, we're not, we never were, we never will be. Finished Sasuke. Naruto's grip remained as he listened to Sasuke's outburst. His eyes hadn't left his watch once during Sasuke's outburst as he continued to stare at Choji's missing chakra signature. What's wrong, ITDI? Before Sasuke could continue, he noticed a change in Naruto's appearance. His eyes. They were now glowing red, almost like his Sharingan, but instead of a formation of commas, Naruto's eyes had slits down the center. Sasuke had seen them before. Those eyes had made more than one appearance during their fight, and now they were back. You're right, Sasuke, we're not the same, started Naruto. His tone had darkened as his voice got raspier with each spoken word. You hold absolutely no meaning. No worth. No value. As Naruto finished talking, he glanced at Sasuke's changed expression. He now sported a frown while his eyes had transformed into the Sharingan, most likely subconsciously due to Naruto's shift in demeanor. Well, you aren't entirely lacking in value. We can still use those eyes. A kunai poofed into Naruto's hand from the seal on his wrist as he raised the knife towards Sasuke's face. Naruto had begun to learn Fuinjutsu just before the finals of the Chunin exams. His teacher, Jiraiya, had recommended that he do so after noticing the boy's slight interest in the arts. Sasuke began to struggle under Naruto's grasp as the knife inched closer to his eye. Before Naruto could get too close, however, a hand gripped his wrist, stopping his movement entirely. Both Naruto and Sasuke looked up only to be surprised by who they saw. Kabuto, Naruto snarled. He had a personal disdain for the man after he had survived his Rasengan during their last encounter. Now he was back and just as equally a nuisance as last time. I must apologize, Naruto, I can't let you do that. Those eyes are of the utmost importance to Master Orochimaru, and I'd hate to disappoint him. I don't care about you, Orochimaru, or whatever weird relationship you two have, said Naruto. His anger was rising fast. Both Kabuto and Sasuke could feel the overly dense chakra rolling off of Naruto in waves. The Nine Tails. It won't be good if he loses control. I'd better end this now. Sorry, Naruto, but obtaining Sasuke wasn't my only task, I must you as well. You are growing to be too much of a threat, your defeat of Sasuke being proof enough. Before Kabuto could act on his threat, he was forced to jump back as a barrage of kunai was thrown at him. Just 5 feet from Naruto and Sasuke stood Kakashi. Naruto was happy to see the man for the first time in his life. He didn't dislike his teacher, Kakashi, just tended to be infuriating at times. He knew he didn't have the ability or chakra to fight Kabuto in his current state and didn't like his odds of getting out of this situation alive, so Kakashi's appearance was welcomed. I'm going to have to ask you to step away from my genin Kabuto, said Kakashi. His tone was that of boredom, but his body language spoke otherwise. Kabuto was someone not too far off from his level. He needed to take this seriously. Kakashi, what a surprise, responded Kabuto. He was irritated by Kakashi's arrival. He should have been on his way back to Orochimaru with Sasuke by now. You can't beat me, Kabuto. You may be strong, but you're not strong enough. As Kakashi finished, he lifted his headband, revealing his fully matured Sharingan. There's no way I can stop him from Naruto and taking Sasuke while trying to fight him at the same time. What do I do here? I'm sure you've realized by now, Kakashi, but you won't be leaving here with both of them. You'll have to make a choice, said Kabuto. Kakashi cursed his situation as he tried to think of anything he could do to tip the balance in his favor. Naruto, having had enough of the talking, decided he'd be the first to act. Launching his fist forward, He attempted to end Sasuke's life immediately, Sharingan be damned. Before he could land a blow, Kabuto lunged forward once again, grabbing his arm. This wasn't without consequence, however, as Naruto managed to slice Sasuke's right eye with his kunai. Sasuke doubled over in pain, screaming as he grasped his bleeding socket. "You fool!" yelled Kabuto as he slashed his own kunai down towards Naruto, planning on finishing the boy for good. Before he could connect, Kakashi managed to land a kick on the left of Kabuto's abdomen, sending him lying sideways. Naruto jumped back as Kakashi reached for Sasuke, but Kabuto threw a paper bomb-laced kunai in their direction, forcing Kakashi to leap backward next to Naruto. Before Kakashi could re-engage, Kabuto managed to shunshin to Sasuke and shunshin away, just nearly avoiding the paper bomb's explosion. "That's enough," yelled Kabuto, unable to contain his frustration. "This conflict is futile and will only result in neither of us getting what we want." Kakashi agreed but refused to be the first to let his guard down. There was no guessing what someone like Kabuto was capable of, and Kakashi wasn't one to be willingly caught off guard. "You take the Nine-Tails brat, and I'll take the Uchiha. There is no point in any further risk," finished Kabuto. To further antagonize Kabuto, Naruto decided to get one final word in before their departure. "Go run to your snake bitch Kabuto. I wanted to you anyway. This just means I have the chance to become strong enough to do it," said Naruto. Kabuto frowned at Naruto's words as he decided to cut his losses and shunshin away with a groaning Sasuke. Orochimaru was going to be very displeased with the results of the day's events. Flashback end. I told you yesterday, Sakura, and I will tell you again. Sasuke will not live to achieve his ambitions, and I meant it. Whether or not that goes against your desires is not my concern, said Naruto, finally turning to face Sakura. Everyone in the room was apart from Tsunade was stunned. She had heard the story from Naruto the night before but had chosen to leave it out of the report, figuring the others had no reason to know of such events. "Well, can't fault you for trying. I'd have done the same thing if one of my teammates had died trying to bring back the bastard," said Kankuro. Tamari couldn't help but agree and had been shocked by what she'd just heard. Sure, she had heard him say that he was going to Sasuke to Sakura the day before, but to find out he'd not only already tried but had also attempted to take the boy's eyes was surprising. Right when she thinks she's starting to know Naruto better, he goes on to shock her again. He isn't Konoha's #1 unpredictable ninja for nothing, I guess. Sakura was stunned, to say the least. She had figured Naruto's sudden desire to Sasuke was a temporary result formed from the mission's outcome. To find out that he'd already tried was almost too much for her to handle. "We were supposed to be a team, what is happening?" Just as quickly as her shock had arrived, it disappeared, and in its place was anger. What right did Naruto have to make that decision? What about her? What about Team 7? Before Sakura could come to her senses, she decided to run off her anger, diving forward with full intentions of showing Naruto what she thought about his actions. Naruto, having seen Tamari move out of the corner of his eye, didn't bother reacting to Sakura's sudden attack as she was roughly pinned to the wall by Tamari. "Bold move, girl, I didn't realize Konoha was capable of producing such stupidity," taunted Tamari as she shoved her forearm into Sakura's neck, causing the girl to stand on her toes. Grunting, Sakura turned her attention back to Naruto, wanting to at least voice her feelings if she couldn't act on them. "How could you, Naruto? Sasuke is our teammate. How could you try to him? You're a monster," grunted Sakura. Temari's hold on her was making it difficult to speak, and her throat was starting to get sore. "You mean like he tried to me?" replied Naruto. "Sasuke shoved a Chidori through my chest, yet I continued to try and bring him back. But when one of ours dies because of his actions, I'm suddenly the villain for trying to put an end to it." The room was deathly silent as they listened to Naruto speak. They were all shocked by Sakura's views on the situation. Sure, Sasuke had once been a comrade, but he was a traitor now, and Choji had died because of it. What kind of shinobi do you want to be, Sakura? Huh. I've spent the last 8 months watching you disgrace our occupation with your obsession with that traitor. You repeatedly refused to work on your skill set, refused to train, refused to reflect, refused to acknowledge reality. Naruto's voice rose as his anger became evident. Choji's dead because of Sasuke, and here you are refusing to see reality. Sakura struggled against Temari's grip as her disdain for Naruto grew. Her face reddened, and it looked as though she would explode at any moment. Naruto walked over to Sakura as she continued to squirm under Temari's hold. He reached out and grabbed her headband, causing some in the room to raise their eyebrows in question. A genin couldn't exactly terminate a fellow shinobi, however, given the tone of the moment, no one said anything, not even Tsunade. I'm well past putting up with your bullshit, Sakura. You aren't a shinobi, you're a child playing dress up and you disgust me. Having said his part, Naruto, without turning to face the doorway, flung Sakura's headband down the hallway and walked back over to stand by everyone else. I'm disappointed, Sakura, and to think the reason I called you here this morning was to offer you, Hinata, and Ino a chance to apprentice under me. Such a shame. Despite her words, Tsunade didn't sound disappointed. Naruto figured it was because of what he'd told her during their trip back to the village. Naruto had realized that Tsunade had a bias when it came to him. Almost as though he were of higher priority than Konoha itself. Is this what it means to truly care for someone? Naruto had never felt that way about anyone, not even Choji and Shikamaru. At least he didn't think he did. Do I care for Tsunade to that extent? We haven't known each other for all that long, and yet she's made an actual effort to show she cares about me. Before Naruto could finish his thoughts, Tsunade continued to speak, this time addressing the entire room. Okay, this meeting is beginning to become a headache. Hinata, Ino, I'll summon you two later to further discuss the apprenticeship. Temari, Gaara, Kankuro, I had something planned to say as well, but I'm not in the mood anymore, so you're free to go. You two, Shikamaru, Naruto, you stay. As everyone left the office, Temari released Sakura and spared Naruto one last glance. She wasn't sure, but something seemed off. Had he been affected by Sakura's actions? She wasn't sure, but she had another few days until she left for Suna and decided she'd find him later. Sakura rubbed her neck after being dropped by Temari. The sand ninja was strong and tall. The position she was pinned in was not comfortable in the slightest. As she finished rubbing her neck, Tsunade spoke, her tone sounding anything but pleased. Wait outside, Sakura, I'll call you in when I'm done speaking with Naruto. Sakura hesitated for a second before turning with a huff and closing the doors behind her. Are you okay, sweetie? Asked Tsunade. He didn't show it, but she knew Sakura's actions bothered him. She was also aware that Temari noticed Naruto's feelings, too. The sand girl intrigued her, and she planned on having a one-on-one talk with her later on. I'm fine, Auntie. I stopped caring about that girl and her poor ventures a long time ago, said Naruto. Tsunade smiled at his attempt to evade the subject as she stood and rounded her desk. Naruto allowed her to hug him as he stood awkwardly for a moment. Slowly, he wrapped his arms around her, choosing to bask in the warmth of the unfamiliar feeling. Tsunade was the only person to have ever hugged him. This was their third or fourth time, and while he wouldn't admit it, he quite enjoyed these moments they had together. Tsunade chose to speak while continuing their hug. She's your teammate. It's okay to be hurt by what she did, Naruto. I wasn't hurt by it, I don't know. I don't know what I'm feeling, responded Naruto. He's never been this open with anyone before. The only person he'd ever come close to was the third Hokage, and that stopped the second Naruto realized the third was attempting to manipulate him during almost every interaction. The third wanted a weapon. Something to strike fear into the other shinobi nations. By the time Naruto was 8 years old, he realized he was being groomed into a monster. He had shut down completely after that. He may struggle to understand his emotions, but he knew what he wanted, and it wasn't to be a mindlessing machine. Tsunade, for her part, was beyond happy. Naruto was opening up much faster than she had expected him to. If they kept up at this pace, she might even be able to move on to the next step of her plan. She wanted nothing but the best for Naruto, and if things continued the way they were, she'd achieve that goal in the next few years. Hey, I'm back with another chapter. This one is a bit shorter. I just really wanted to get something out there to prevent too large of a delay between chapter releases. I'm planning on getting most of the heavy emotional stuff out of the way in the first few chapters, but most of the FIC will have the heavy tone that's been present so far. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the chapter. As always, share the FIC if you enjoy it and leave a comment even if you hate it. Thanks, smiley face. Can I help you with something, Jiraiya? Don't be like that, Tsunade. It's too early in the morning to be upset at each other. Jiraiya shifted himself in his seated position on the windowsill behind Tsunade's desk. Despite her words, she seemed to be in a better mood than usual. Turning to look at the corner of the room, he noticed his apprentice lying on the couch sound asleep. I didn't want to wake him. I'm well aware he doesn't get good sleep. Why you didn't feel the need to bring that fact to my attention is beyond me, though, finished Tsunade. Her tone had sharpened toward the end of the dialogue, and had Jiraiya been any less of a man, he would have exited right where he entered. So she wasn't happy to see me, figures. I was trying to help him with that myself. He is my apprentice after all. It's my job to help him with these things, said Jiraiya. He had a proud smirk adorning his face, figuring his response would soothe Tsunade's early morning temper. He's not your apprentice, Jiraiya. He's made it very clear he wants nothing out of you. The only reason I'm even entertaining the idea of this training trip is because I think he could benefit from being away from the village for a while. He'll come around in no time. Just wait until he sees the jutsu I've been planning on teaching him. He'll have no choice but to call me sensei. Suan put down her pen and glanced at Jiraiya from the corner of her eye. He was still perched on the windowsill, leveling his gaze upon the village. His smirk remained almost as if he was proud of the words he'd just spoken. Idiot. So that's your plan, lead Naruto on with new jutsus until he respects you. He's not 5, Jiraiya. He knows when someone is making a fool out of him. Of course you wouldn't know what he was like when he was 5, given you weren't there, scolded Tsunade. That was a low blow, and you know it, Tsunade, responded Jiraiya. He was starting to get agitated, and he hadn't even been here for more than 2 minutes. I had responsibilities, tasks that prevented me from being here for the boy. If you'd been here, you'd know that. I am one of the strongest ninjas in the shinobi nations after all. I was needed elsewhere. Talking about yourself already, I see. I didn't say you had to spend every waking moment with the boy, you just needed to let him know that you were out there, that there was someone who cared. Instead, you spent all your free time blowing money on hookers and whores, dodging all the responsibility left to you by your real student, finished Suanad. Before she could continue her rant, she noticed Naruto stir and turn over in his sleep. Realizing they needed to calm down before things got too heated, Tsunade decided to turn her attention back to the paperwork on her desk. It was still early, and there was no point in getting a late start to her day because Jiraiya wanted to be a pain in the. How dare you, Tsunade? Would you really stoop so low as to use my dead student against me just to win a petty argument? Jiraiya was upset. He didn't come here to argue with his old teammate, he just wanted to finalize the plans for the training trip he was planning to take Naruto on in a few days. He should have known better than to choose this time of day for a conversation with Tsunade. His presence alone was usually enough to upset her, add to that her not being a morning person, and now you have a recipe for the situation they're currently in. You're no better than I am and certainly are not in a position to take any form of moral high ground, Tsunade. You were gone too. You were close to Kushina yet didn't return when news of her passing spread across the land of fire. Jiraiya wasn't usually one for arguments, especially not when they pertained to Minato and the events of his death, but he was beyond irritated at this point. And to think I thought you changed, that you could be a good Kage. You don't think I've realized your personal biases toward Naruto? I'm starting to think the only reason you agreed to take up the hat was to be closer to him. A village full of people, and you'd be willing to cast them aside if it benefited that boy. It's honestly disgusting. Before Jiraiya could continue, he felt a cold and sharp sensation rest along the front of his neck. Glancing backwards, he realized Naruto had not only woken up, but had taken up a threatening position behind him. That ice-cold look in his eyes is so much like Minato's it's almost scary. Almost. Another foul word out of your mouth and I'll slice your neck right open, Sensei. His tone was anything but pleasant as he turned his gaze to Tsunade. She had a surprisingly pleased look on her face despite the harsh words that had been thrown at her just moments ago. You're about 50 years too early to be threatening me, kid, replied Jiraiya. He was shocked by Naruto's actions and was attempting to wrap his head around the seemingly sudden bond he and Tsunade had managed to form in the short amount of time she'd been in the village. Before he could continue his train of thought, he felt Naruto press the kunai deeper into his neck just above his Adam's apple, drawing blood. Waiting a few moments to collect himself, Jiraiya decided there was no point in worsening his situation. Usually, he'd use this moment to teach Naruto just why you don't pick fights with your superiors, but figured Tsunade wouldn't let him lay a finger on the boy anytime soon. Okay, I'll stop. Can you put the knife away now? Waiting a few moments, Naruto slowly lowered his hand, opting to take a few steps back just in case the perverted hermit was stupid enough to try something. I'm shocked, Jiraiya. You let a genin get the drop on you, and they call you the strongest Sannin, said Suand in a mocking tone. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you were the one who needs a training trip, not Naruto. Oh, please. We both know Naruto's no regular genin. He's easily at high Chunin level by now. You say that in a dignified manner as if that makes it any better, said Tsunade. Truthfully, she herself hadn't even seen Naruto move. The boy had appeared in a blur with his kunai already drawn. Maybe she needed to work the dust off, too. I was on the road for a while. What training trip? Asked Naruto. This was the first he was hearing of the trip, and he wasn't sure if he liked the idea of being outside of the village with Jiraiya for any longer than he needed to. I'm taking you away from the village for a few years, kid. There's a threat out there and they're looking for you. You've actually already encountered them before. I'm sure you remember. Naruto took a moment to think before responding to Jiraiya. Itachi and Kisame. I remember them. Yeah, well, they're not the only ones. Hell, they're not even the strongest. I need to get you ready to face off against anyone they send after you, and I can't do that in the village. Not with what I have planned, finished Jiraiya. Naruto digested everything he'd just heard. It wasn't too shocking given this wasn't the first time he'd thought about it. There was an obvious reason people would want to obtain him, or rather, what resided within him. He had put two and two together right after he escaped Itachi and Kisame. They want the fox, but why? What do they want with my tenant? Asked Naruto, his face remaining blank. We don't know, but it can't be anything good, said Tsunade. Honestly, I don't care for their reasons either way. Taking the Kyuubi would mean your death, and that's not something I'm okay with, even if they somehow had noble intentions. Tsunade stood from her desk and made her way in front of Naruto, intentionally bumping Jiraiya on the way over. Placing her hand on Naruto's chin and lifting his head upward toward her face, she smiled warmly before continuing. You may not like him, but he is the best we have. You could learn a lot from him, truly, said Tsunade. Her smile remained as she watched Naruto think everything over. She was positive he'd agree to it, he just needed a push. You know, if I didn't know any better, I'd say you were his mother, said Jiraiya. He had made his way to the wall just right of the window and was watching their interaction intently. He would have found it touching if they hadn't had such a violent start to their morning. Tsunade eyed Jiraiya and smirked. She would be whatever Naruto needed her to be. Mother, grandmother, aunt, or even sister. It didn't matter to her. As long as he felt loved and cared for, she'd be content with any outcome. Fine. I'll travel with the pervert, but I have some conditions, said Naruto, having finished his contemplations. Letting go of Naruto's chin, Tsunade made her way back to her desk, once again taking a seat. She propped her feet up on her desk, opting to be comfortable, not caring for the paperwork she'd been working on prior to their conversation. Let's hear them. As long as they're not outlandish, of course, replied Tsunade. Jiraiya, wanting to also be comfortable, leaned back against the wall while crossing his arms over his chest. He didn't like where this was going and had a feeling he'd be leaving this meeting even more agitated than he already was. I only have 2 demands. And I do mean demands, started Naruto. He had taken a seat back on the couch he'd been previously resting on and was staring at the ground. Firstly, we won't be training in the Nine Tails chakra, not yet, at least. That's something I plan on doing at my own pace for my own reasons, I may or may not disclose. Tsunade nodded her head at this. She figured no one would know when a Jinchuriku was ready to train in their tailed beast's chakra better than a Jinchuriku. Jiraiya, on the other hand, was not as accepting. He stood up straight with his arms remaining crossed as he opened his mouth to object to Naruto's demand, but stopped when he saw the glare aimed directly at him. Jiraiya wasn't one to scare easily, yet something about Naruto's gaze sent a shiver up his spine that he couldn't seem to shake. He truly is just like Minato. Jiraiya wasn't usually one to stay serious for long periods of time. He enjoyed maintaining a light mood and savoring each day as it came. He, of course, learned long ago to always expect the unexpected, yet somehow he just had his entire world flipped upside down. By a mere genin no less. Naruto Uzumaki knew of his father. Probably his mother, too, but when Jiraiya was posted up by the main gate of Konoha, Naruto was making his rounds and saying his goodbyes before leaving for their training trip. It had, however, been 3 hours since he'd told the boy to wrap things up and meet him at the gate. It's not like he knows a ton of people. What could possibly be taking him so long? Before Jiraiya could ponder any further, he caught sight of Naruto coming down the main road. Surprisingly enough, he wasn't alone. Standing next to him were Temari, Gaara, and Kankuro. As they got closer, Jiraiya noticed that Temari was laughing at something Naruto had said while Naruto himself had a smirk adorning his face. Wanting to make his urgency and disapproval for Naruto's tardiness clear, Jiraiya stood up straight from his laxed position against the wall of the gate. Stepping in front of the entrance, he continued to watch as they approached, noticing that Gaara and Kankuro also wore smirks of their own, only theirs weren't aimed at Naruto. No, they were directed toward their sister, Temari. It was almost as if they hadn't seen her laugh or smile in ages. Hell, Gaara himself probably hadn't laughed or smiled since the day he was born. Finally reaching Jiraiya, Naruto's smirk faded as he allowed his gaze to fall upon him. Jiraiya, started Naruto. Have you been waiting long? Jiraiya's eye twitched at the boy's words. Naruto knew Jiraiya had been waiting for hours and was rubbing it in his face. Probably wasn't even saying his goodbyes, he just wanted to irritate me. Clearly, he's still sour about the other day. Sighing, Jiraiya waved off Naruto's comment, saying it was time to go before turning and starting up the road. You don't mind if Temari and the others join us for a while, do you? Said Naruto, stopping Jiraiya in his tracks. They leave for Suna today, and I figured since we'd be passing by, they could travel with us. Jiraiya turned to face the group and thought about Naruto's request. It couldn't hurt to travel with company for a while. Plus, with how pissy Naruto's been lately, the better of a mood he's in, the easier my time is. Sure, Just keep your chatter down, I don't feel like listening in on any teenage drama, said Jiraiya before turning and continuing up the road. Temari rolled her eyes and followed alongside Naruto and the rest. Before they could make it 10 feet, they heard someone yell Naruto's name from behind them. Leaving already? And here I thought you'd at least say goodbye. Naruto stopped once he realized who was yelling after him. There wasn't a single person present who felt like putting up with this person at the moment, but it was looking like their journey would have to wait just a little bit longer. I have nothing to say to you. Go back to whatever psych ward Suon decided to put you in, said Naruto. His tone was flat, and he still had yet to turn around. Oh, please, lazy insults like that won't work on me, Naruto. I'm not as crazy as you want everyone to think I am. Besides, aren't you the one who wants to your teammate? Doesn't seem too sane to me. Turning to face the person behind him, Naruto's blank expression remained, unmoving and stone-like. What is it you want, Sakura? I don't have time for this, said Naruto. I'm here to give you a warning. The others might not see you for who you really are, but I do. You're just a demon masquerading as a ninja, said Sakura. She slowly approached Naruto until they were standing just a foot apart from each other. Once you leave, stay gone. For good. You may want to Sasuke, but I won't let you. Not for as long as I breathe. Naruto smiled at this. A full and genuine smile. It seemed almost eerie and unfitting on Naruto's face, as if he'd stolen it from someone else. For as long as you breathe, huh? Are you sure about that? Asked Naruto. Sakura stared at him for a moment as a frown slowly formed on her face. What are you gonna do, Naruto? You gonna try and me too? Sakura snorted as she continued, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, you must be constantly fiending for blood given what's in sea. Before Sakura could finish, Jiraiya appeared beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. That's enough, Sakura. Shouldn't you be home? If I recall correctly, Tsunade placed you on house arrest after you tried to attack Naruto at the mission briefing. I don't even know how you got this far without being stopped by Anbu, said Jiraiya. Ha, they probably don't take her seriously. I mean, look at her. She barely even looks like a shinobi, said Kankuro while folding his arms. He had a smile on his face, hoping to get a reaction out of the pink-haired girl. With a HMPH, Sakura turned and began her trek back home. Before getting too far, she decided to say one last thing to her teammate. Make sure you heed my warning, Naruto. If you continue down this path, I will do anything to protect Sasuke. Until my last breath, finished Sakura as she resumed her walk home. Naruto's smile widened as Sakura finished her rant. He very much hoped she remained true to her word. He wasn't sure why. Usually, Naruto couldn't care less about the opinions and desires of others, but he felt as though he'd enjoy putting Sakura in her place. Wouldn't that be great? Jiraiya noted the look on Naruto's face as the group began their journey away from Konoha. This is gonna be an irritable few years. Why'd I decide to take him on this trip again? As they traversed further from the village, a pair of blood-red eyes with 3 tomos watched the group. More specifically, they watched the blonde-haired Uzumaki. Staring a while longer before deciding to take their leave, they took one last glance at the boy. What will you become, Naruto Uzumaki? 3 years later. Suond. Tier been a disturbance at the west gate. They're saying they're bandits. Tsunade glanced up from her paperwork while taking a sip of her coffee. She noted that the Chunin who stood in front of her seemed nervous. If he was scared, she'd react violently to his report. Maybe I've been too harsh these past 3 years. It's just been so irritating without Naruto around. Bandits attempt to break in at night all the time. The localized Anbu will handle it, stated Tsunade, returning her attention to her paperwork work. As she reached for the next form, she noticed this one wasn't of official Hokage business. It was a letter from Jiraiya, and based on when it was dated, it had been sitting on her desk for quite some time. Shizune must have gotten it mixed up. As Tsunade opened the letter and began to scan its contents, the Chunin standing at the entrance to the office gulped before speaking up again. Ma'am. They're saying that it's an extremely large force, plus they can apparently use chakra. Many of them can utilize chakra, and it's against protocol to mobilize that many Anbu in one portion of the village, finished the Chunin. While the Chunin finished speaking, Tsunade was approaching the end of the letter. As she continued to read, her eyes slowly began to widen as a smile tugged at her lips. Finally, looking up to acknowledge the Chunin, Tsunade spoke, "You were saying." Down by the west entrance of the village, chaos had erupted as villagers scrambled to get away from the beginnings of what was sure to be a long battle. Shinobi rushed into the scene as they began to engage the bandits. Kunais and jutsus were traded as bodies on both sides began to drop. In the middle of the altercation, a little girl no older than 10 tripped and fell. Sitting up while dusting herself off, the girl looked to their right only to notice a bandit walking right toward them with a disturbing smile on their face. As the bandit reached out to grab the child, a kunai embedded itself in their arm, causing them to scream in agony. Ripping the kunai out of their arm, the bandit turned to see who dared interfere before receiving a vicious palm strike to their chest, ing them instantly. Turning to see who'd saved her, the girl saw a tall man with pale white eyes and long black straight hair. The ninja helped the girl up before telling her to continue to the safe zones within the village. Turning to rejoin the fight, the man heard someone call after him. "Neji. They're breaching the south wing too. You're the highest ranking shinobi I've run into so far, so you're going to have to form a team to help the Anbu in that sector." "I'll get right on it, Lee," replied Neji. Lee smiled before jumping back into the fight, chanting something about youth as he engaged the bandits. Searching for the nearest shinobi he could take with him to the south wing, Neji realized that a vast majority of the bandits possessed the ability to use chakra. Usually, with bandit groups, under a quarter of the members would be capable of this. Not only that, but this attack was much larger and still growing, if the attack on the south entrance was anything to go by. Deciding the basis of the attack would be someone else's problem at a later time, Neji continued with his task of finding shinobi to help defend the south entrance. Running forward, Neji's movement was stopped by a barrage of paper bomb kunai that were thrown at the area in front of him. Throwing up his arms to cover his face, Neji noticed a kunai plant itself in the ground just 2 feet in front of him. There was something off about the kunai, however. It was wrapped with some sort of tag, almost like a paper bomb, but different. As Neji tried to get a better look at the kanji written on the kunai, he was forced to squint as a bright red flash appeared right where the kunai had been located. In its place was a man resting in a crouched position. Said man picked up the kunai as they slowly turned to look at Neji. To Neji's shock, the man's eyes appeared to be blood red with slits down the center. The man possessed black, spiky hair with 3 whisker-like marks on each cheek. He was dressed in black baggy Anbu-style combat pants with a dark blue jonin top. The mystery figure possessed no vest or headband, but did sport an Anbu-like sword and a tanto blade on their back. Before Neji could realize who it was he was looking at, the man smiled a toothy smile before flashing away once more. Hearing a noise to his left, Neji turned to see a giant toad fall from the air and land on a group of bandits, crushing them while muffling their agonizing screams. Noticing another flash out of the corner of his eye, Neji turned his head only to be left speechless by what he saw. Constant blinding red flashes that were exaggerated by the night sky appeared around all the bandits before they were swiftly cut down. The flashes continued for what seemed like ages while bandit after bandit was slain effortlessly. Once the bandit forces were nearly cut in half, the rest decided it was time to cut their losses and retreat as they turned and headed toward the village entrance. Noticing a final flash, Neji and the surrounding Konoha shinobi not currently in a fight gathered as the mysterious man once again stood from their crouched position. The man turned to look at everyone while spinning the kunai in his hand. His eyes landed on Neji before he once again smiled that same toothy grin. Taking a moment to analyze the person, Neji finally realized who he was looking at. It may have been 3 years, and his hair might be a different color, but there was no mistaking that face for Neji. Neji smiled as his old comrade approached him while holstering the kunai in a gray pouch resting on the back of his waist. "It's good to see you again, Neji," said the man. Neji smiled after hearing his voice. There was no mistaking it now. It was him. Hiruzen had lived a long and mostly prosperous life so far. He'd been named God of Shinobi for his extensive knowledge in the shinobi arts and currently holds the longest career as a Hokage in Konoha history. He wasn't too sure the latter was a good thing. His successor had died far too young, alongside the first and second Hokage. Turning to look out the window of his hospital room, Hiruzen reflected upon the latter years of his career. He'd made many mistakes, some of which he was certain he'd never be able to amend. His biggest mistake by far was failing to stop Orochimaru. "If only I hadn't been so soft. Maybe things would have been different now. I wouldn't be in this hospital bed, that's for sure." Then there's Naruto. Hiruzen turned his attention to the front of his room as he delved deeper in thought. He knew he'd wronged the boy. Naruto Uzumaki was meant to be seen as a hero who'd saved the village, not a monster to be feared. Despite this, however, Hiruzen couldn't bring himself to regret his choices in regard of the Jinchuriku. He felt as though what he'd done was best for the village, even if it wasn't what was best for Naruto. The only question now was whether or not he could be forgiven. It needed to be done for the greater good of the village, even if Naruto had to suffer for it. He'll understand, one day. As Hiruzen continued to ponder, he heard a knock as the door to his room began to open. Hiruzen glanced at the entrance and noticed he'd been assigned a new nurse. She was tall and slim, her height being all the more exaggerated by the heels she was wearing. The nurse had striking green eyes while possessing bubble-gum pink hair. She looked familiar. She couldn't be an ex-shinobi, she's still too young. "Good morning, Mr. Sarutobi. My name is Sakura Haruno. I'll be your nurse for the remainder of your stay at Konoha General. If you have any questions or would like to request a new nurse, you may ask at the end of my care for today." Sakura finished her greeting with a sweet smile, wanting to leave a good impression on the third Hokage. "It's nice to meet you, Sakura. A new nurse won't be necessary, you'll do just fine, and please call me Hiruzen." Sakura's smile grew as she moved to check Hiruzen's pulse monitor. She decided to hurry through the checkup, noting that she still hadn't made up for her late start to the day. Hiruzen watched the girl work, noticing that she was moving at a faster than normal pace. Faster than the last nurse, at least. Takes some skill to be fast and remain thorough, she's got some talent. As Hiruzen continued to observe the girl, he slowly began to remember where he'd met her before. "You're Naruto's teammate, yes?" asked Hiruzen. He noticed Sakura pause at the mention of the Jinchuriku, almost as if she hadn't heard the name in years. "He has been gone for a while." Sakura turned her head slightly to look at Hiruzen, trying her hardest to smile. Yes, I am," replied Sakura. Hiruzen noticed the forced smile and couldn't help but wonder what the deal between the two was. "I see. You must miss him," said Hiruzen. He leaned further forward, opting to sit up in his bed. "How long's it been since he left?" 4 years. Sakura's face lowered as she responded to his question. "Yeah, almost," said Sakura. Her tone had softened as she turned to face Hiruzen completely. "I think about him a lot, especially recently. Things were left pretty poorly between us when he left." Sakura decided to resume the checkup while continuing to vent to Hiruzen. "I was in a bad state of mind after Sasuke left, and Naruto said he wanted to him. I couldn't handle it all, and I just snapped. I even tried attacking him. It's a miracle I even still have a career after everything that happened," finished. Hiruzen looked at her with understanding. He'd wronged many people in his life, Naruto being one of them. He was curious, however, about Sakura's last point. Tsunade seemed to have a particular fondness for the boy, almost like a mother or older sister. Given she would have been Hokage when the events told by Sakura took place, just how did the girl still have a career? Tsunade wasn't one for forgiveness, especially not to those who harmed the ones closest to her. What was Tsunade's reaction to it all? Asked Hiruzen. Sakura clasped the folder she'd picked up from the far corner of the room, retaining Hiruzen's medical info as she turned to once again look at him. She thought back to the couple of weeks after Naruto's departure. Tsunade had been furious about the events that took place in her office, and had it not been for her apprentice Shizune, Tsunade probably would have sent her home through the wall of the office. She said she saw potential in me. That, despite my wrongdoings, I could still be of use to the village. Hiruzen smiled as he listened to the pink-haired medic. That's quite the statement. It seems Tsunade hasn't lost her bluntness over the years, said Hiruzen. Sakura smiled as she thought of the Hokage. No, she hasn't. If not for Kakashi informing her of my natural talent in chakra control, I don't know where I'd be right now. Hell, I'm still in the therapy program she placed me in 2 years ago, finished Sakura. She placed the folder into a rack on the wall and momentarily glanced out the window. It was already dark out, and she still had rounds to make. It's gonna be a long night. Turning to finish speaking to the third, Sakura heard commotion from outside. It sounded as if people were screaming. Walking over to take a look, she flipped the latch and raised the window only to be shocked by what she saw. The main gate was being breached by what appeared to be a large force of bandits. There's so many of them, stammered Sakura. There had been a few break-in attempts over the years by smaller groups of bandits, but none had ever breached the walls. Glancing around, Sakura noticed that some of them were using chakra. I sense chakra usage. What's going on out there? Asked Hiruzen. Sakura turned to look at him with shock written all over her face. Hiruzen noted her expression and slowly stood to view the chaos that took place below. Sakura offered her shoulder to the third and helped him walk over to the window. My God, whispered Hiruzen. The bandits had completely broken through the gates and were now attacking and damaging anything in their sight. How'd they get past our barrier system? We should have sensed them, especially because they're using chakra, said Hiruzen. He was no stranger to conflict, especially not in his home village. It had been an invasion from his wayward student that had landed him in and out of the hospital for the past 4 years. This, however, was different. He'd never seen a bandit force of such magnitude, add chakra on top of that, and this is one of the Leaf's most embarrassing defensive failures. But how? Sakura wanted nothing more than to go down and help her comrades defend the village, but Tsunade still had yet to clear her for active duty service. Despite the great strides she's made over the past 4 years, Tsunade still doesn't trust her to be out in the field. Come on, sir, let's get you back in bed. This sector's Anbu, alongside fellow shinobi, should be enough for the bandits, said Sakura as she began to lead Hiruzen back to his bed. Before she could fully turn around, Sakura caught something out of the corner of her eye. Helping Hiruzen sit down, Sakura once again approached the window to get a better look. Glancing to her right, she noticed a kunai embedded in the wall just a few feet from the window. There was something off about the kunai, though. The handle was wrapped in paper, and it had different kanji written across the entirety of it. Leaning forward to get a better look, Sakura was startled backward when a bright red flash appeared right where the kunai was. In its place was a man in a crouched position. Sakura couldn't see much since he was facing away from her, but she could tell he was a shinobi. Are you okay, Sakura? What startled you so suddenly? Asked Hiruzen. At the announcement of her name, the man crouched outside the window turned to look at Sakura. He had dark hair with blood-red eyes that had slits running down the center. Despite being crouched, Sakura could tell the man was tall. There was one thing about his appearance that caught her attention, and surprisingly, it wasn't the color of his eyes. Being on a team with a Uchiha and a Jinchuriku for 8 months will force you to adjust to strange eye colors. No, it was the man's cheeks. Or to be more specific, the 6 whisker-like marks that adorned them. No way, whispered Sakura. She couldn't believe her eyes. He looked so different from the boy who'd left 4 years ago. What is it, Sakura? Who's there? Asked Hiruzen. Sakura had been dead silent for almost 30 seconds, and he was starting to get worried. The man outside the window shifted his attention from Sakura and tossed his kunai toward the chaos below, disappearing in a red flash. Sakura turned to face Hiruzen with a startled expression, only this time she finally spoke. It's Naruto, he's back. Hiruzen's eyes widened as he digested the girl's words. If she were telling the truth, then he could finally work towards earning the boy's forgiveness. If he was going to face the boy's father in the afterlife, then he had to at least try. Sakura was having similar thoughts as she gazed at the countless red flashes that spread across the street below. Naruto was moving so fast that she could hardly keep up. I can finally work towards making it up to him. But will he even forgive me? Does he care? He seems so different, so dark and scary. Almost like, finally back with another chapter. Before I continue the story, just wanted to say thanks to everyone who left comments on my story. Reading comments last night is what motivated me to finish this chapter, so again, thanks for that. Just to acknowledge some of the comments, no, it will not be a Sakura bashing fic, but there will be future conflicts involving her and other protagonists. Once again, don't worry, I do have a plan for Sakura as a character in this story. I know it seems like she's had a complete 180, but I promise she hasn't, and it'll be explored in the coming chapters after I've showcased Naruto and his development as a character and his growing relationships with others. With that being said, like always, follow, share the story, and leave a comment even if you hate it. Thanks, smiley face. A man with black hair dressed in a dark shinobi outfit could be seen standing next to a pile of rubble. He reached down and pulled out what seemed to be the hand of a human body trapped beneath. You got one, Naruto, yelled a voice from behind him. Choosing to pull the person out of the wreckage before responding, Naruto carried the deceased individual over to a pile of bodies that had also been found in the aftermath of the attack. Turning to acknowledge the person who'd called out to him, Naruto paused momentarily as he leveled his gaze upon them. Sakura Haruno had done nothing but confuse Naruto since he'd returned to the village. He had left when their relationship had been reduced to virtually nothing, as she'd acted as a grade just prior to his departure. She's been nothing but kind to me since I saw her in Hiruzen's hospital room. Growth is one thing, but this seems like an impossible amount of change in such a short time for someone who practically threatened to end me if I tried to come between her and her love life. There aren't any more bodies in this sector of the village, and the rest are covered by Neji and his team, so our jobs are done, said Naruto. Good. That's good, replied Sakura. The two of them stood in awkward silence, neither knowing what to say to the other. It had been almost 3 to 4 years since they last saw each other. There should have been so much to talk about, yet neither could think of anything to say. I guess it is my fault. I had been so terrible to him before he left. I should apologize, but I don't want it to seem shallow and forced. How was your trip? You were gone for a while, so I imagine you've gotten a lot stronger, said Sakura. Naruto looked at her for a moment before responding, still feeling uncomfortable in her presence. Yeah, you could say that. Despite my history of teachers, I'm not really one to waste time. Sakura nodded her head in response as she looked Naruto up and down. He was noticeably taller than her now. She had to guess. He was probably around 5 feet 10 inches. An impressive height for someone 16 years old. Sakura took notice of his change in appearance as well. His eyes were blood red now. If she were being honest, his eyes, coupled with his now jet black hair, made him impressively frightening. You've changed a lot. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you look almost like Sa. You don't know any better, Haruno, said Naruto. His tone had been calm, almost like a whisper, yet his eyes said otherwise. They were narrowed slightly, and his body had shifted slightly, with his right shoulder now facing her. Right, of course, I wasn't trying to offend you or anything, I was just saying you look really cool and ninja-like now, definitely a step up from the orange jumpsuit you used to wear. Sakura gave an awkward laugh as she finished speaking. Naruto had been back for just over an hour, and she was already screwing up. She felt like hitting herself. I'm going to find Tsunade. Knowing Jiraiya's lazy self, I still have to give her our official return notice, said Naruto. As he turned to leave, Sakura once again spoke up, this time in a slight whisper. Don't speak as if you're better than us, Uzumaki. Confused, Naruto turned to face Sakura. Her head was lowered slightly, but her eyes were starting daggers at him, as if they were piercing his soul. The S going on. Not that I'm surprised, this kind of attitude is what I'd expected from the start, but the sudden change. Has she been acting this whole time, and for what? Before Naruto could respond, Jiraiya appeared next to the two. Glancing between them, he noted the tense atmosphere and mentally scolded himself for picking such a bad time to be productive. Naruto had never particularly been good with girls, which, in Jiraiya's opinion, was a shame given they tended to flock around the young Uzumaki as if he were the next big actor. There is that Tamari girl he seems to like, though. Every time we visited the sand, he'd spend more time with her than he would training. Good evening, Jiraiya, it's nice to see you again. I hope your trip was well, said Sakura. Her posture had changed back to normal, and she now sported a cheery smile. Naruto squinted his eyes in suspicion at her once again, sudden change. What the hell is she playing at? Turning to look at Jiraiya, Naruto could already guess what the perverted hermit had sought him out for. Let me guess, you need me to give Tsunade the report, said Naruto in a less than impressed tone. Hey, yeah, sorry, kid. I got distracted on my way to see her after the bandit mess was dealt with. You know how I am with beautiful women, can't resist 'em, finished Jiraiya. Both Naruto and Sakura's expressions dropped as they listened to the sage speak. I see one of you hasn't changed, mumbled Sakura. What was that? Asked Jiraiya. Before Sakura could respond, Naruto chose to put an end to what would be a pointless argument between the two. Enough, I'll go speak to Tsunade. I wanted to see her anyway. Turning once again to leave, Naruto disappeared in a bright red flash. Show off, wish I could do that, mumbled Jiraiya. What jutsu is that exactly, Master Jiraiya? I saw him use it during the invasion. I've never seen anything like it before. Jiraiya turned to face the girl, happy to see that there were already people impressed with his apprentice's development. Believe it or not, it's an incomplete jutsu, said Jiraiya. Sakura's eyes widened in surprise at the Sanin's words. Incomplete. But it seemed so powerful. You see, right before we left, Naruto expressed interest in learning about the fourth Hokage. That jutsu is Naruto's attempt at replicating the famous Flying Thunder God technique that gave the fourth the nickname the Yellow Flash. And you're saying what I saw earlier was incomplete, said Sakura, not believing the words leaving Jiraiya's mouth. Yeah, he's not even close, believe it or not. Jiraiya took a seat on the ground as he continued to explain the jutsu to Sakura. You see, for him to flash to a new area, he needs to sense a certain type of metal. To be more specific, a seal on a certain type of metal. Not only that, but he has to spend time sensing each and every seal before he can teleport. The more seals there are, the longer it takes him. That's why he wasn't able to intercept that group of bandits before they got to the village, said Jiraiya. Naruto and I had been trailing them for a while, and he was able to slip a piece of metal with his seal into most of their outfits while we monitored their camp for a few days. But since I stayed behind to deal with their camp when they set off, that left Naruto alone to deal with the attack and sense out each of his seal's signatures, finished Jiraiya. I see, so whereas the fourth Hokage could place his seal anywhere, Naruto needs a certain type of metal to sense it, and it takes him longer to locate it, said Sakura. Yep. Pretty much. Honestly, I give him another few months until he has the actual technique mastered. The kid's impressive. Sakura chose to sit down in astonishment as she finished listening to Jiraiya. If what he said is true, then that ability, coupled with Naruto's potential alone, made him one of the most powerful shinobi in the village. Tsunade, you have to finish your paperwork. I know you're excited to see Naruto, but it won't matter if you still have work to do, said Shizune. If she was being honest, she was excited to see Naruto, too. She had formed a decently close bond with the boy in the months leading to his departure and had missed him deeply every day since. Come on, just let me go find him. What if he got hurt in the invasion? He could need me, said Tsunade with fake worry. If the monthly reports Jiraiya had been sending for the past 3 or so years were to be believed, then a group of bandits alone wouldn't come close to harming the boy, even if they had chakra. Tsunade, you know better than anyone that Naruto is fine. Master Jiraiya has made it very clear just how strong Naruto has become. He's probably on his way here at this very moment. Just as Shizune finished, there was a knock on the window behind Tsunade's desk. Smirking, Tsunade spun in her chair as the window slid open. I see you've picked up on some of Jiraiya's bad habits, Uzumaki. Doors exist for a reason, you know, said Tsunade. Too many stairs. Jumping up is easier, replied Naruto as he climbed into the room. Tsunade took note of his appearance but wasn't too surprised. Jiraiya had mentioned in one of his many letters that Naruto's look had changed drastically. The swords, however, had not been mentioned. A sword and a tanto blade. It's almost like he's had Anbu training. Standing from her chair, Tsunade realized just how tall he'd gotten. He was a solid 4 inches taller than her now, and he was just 16. He'd slimmed out with his height, but clearly had a solid build hidden under his dark attire. Looking towards his face, Tsunade saw the most noticeable difference. His eyes. They're so red, so cold. Almost like he's staring through me. Reaching out her arms, Tsunade opted to worry about the boy's changes after she got her hug out of the way. Noting that he no longer hesitated to hug her back, Tsunade basked in the warmth of the hug for a while longer before pulling away and seating herself back in her chair. Letting go of Tsunade, Naruto turned to the other occupant of the office and smiled slightly. Hey Shizune, how've you been? Not wasting a single second, Shizune threw her arms around him. Hey, little brother, I've missed you, whispered Shizune. Pulling back, Shizune kept her hands on the sides of Naruto's arms as she looked him up and down. God, you're taller than me now, that's so not cool, man. Naruto gave a slight laugh as he leaned against the half-open window. Well, I got a lot of sleep in the past 3 years, so. Suon's eyebrows rose in amusement at his words. So you make jokes now, looks like Jiraiya's rubbing off on you. What's next? You gonna start peeping on women? Asked Tsunade with a smile. Naruto felt a shiver run up his spine at the thought of becoming like his teacher. Especially his perverted tendencies. He liked girls, but not to the point of peeping, and certainly not when there was already one he had his sights set on. If it's even possible. So, kid, tell me about your trip. Yours and Jiraiya's letters were nice, but there was a noticeable 4-month gap close to the end, where neither of you sent anything. What was up with that? I was worried sick, said Tsunade. Naruto stared at her momentarily as he thought of an answer. He knew what she was talking about, of course. Those 4 months had been hellish and were a big reason for his change in appearance. I'll tell you what happened, but first, I have a question, said Naruto. Suona nodded her head in acceptance while Shizune leaned against the desk. I ran into Sakura on the way here. At first, she seemed different, like she had changed drastically while I was gone. Tsunade leaned back in her chair as Naruto spoke. She had an idea of what he'd say next, and she wasn't too pleased about it. She'd hoped that Sakura would have made better progress in the past few years, but if Naruto said what she thought he would, then there was still a lot of work to be done. When I was initially going to leave, she had a sudden shift in personality. She made this really weird remark, which reminded me of the way she acted all those years ago. Then when Jiraiya showed up, she reverted to the way she was before. What's up with that? Asked Naruto. Tsunade glanced at Shizune, who had a disappointed expression on her face. She, too, thought Sakura had been making good progress and, as someone who worked closely with the girl's therapist, was really hoping to send Sakura back into the field soon. Turning back to Naruto, Tsunade spoke up. So you've noticed, replied Tsunade. Noticed? Noticed what? Asked Naruto. There's a lot I need to tell you about Sakura and what she's been through since you left Naruto. A lot of it will explain the way she acted the last couple of days before your departure, said Suand. While I'd love to give you the whole rundown now, I think it'd be best if you met me at Konoha General in a few days. We can meet with her therapist, and you can be given a proper explanation as to what's been going on with her, finished Tsunade. I'm fine with that, it's not like I was too interested, our interaction just weirded me out, is all. Good. Now as for you, care to explain as to why you and Jiraiya went Mia for 4 months? Asked Tsunade with a not-so-sweet smile. Shizune leaned in as she too was interested to hear about Naruto's endeavors during his trip.